The alarm screamed through the Valorian battlecruiser as fire spread across the engine deck. Commander Velroth gripped his command chair, watching the damage reports flood his screen. 3 direct hits from the pirate ambush had torn through their shields and ripped open the fusion core housing. His ship, the mighty Radiant Talon, was dying. Navigation. "Find me the nearest repair facility," Velroth commanded. His voice steady despite the chaos. The navigation officer's face fell as she checked her screen. "Commander, the closest Valorian shipyard is 17 days away at our current speed. We have life support for maybe 6. What else is nearby?" "There is a human repair station. Orbital Station Hambit. 3 days travel." Velroth felt his pride twist in his chest. Humans, the newcomers to the Galactic Coalition. A species barely 40 years into space travel, working with technology they barely understood. But he had no choice. His crew would die if he let pride kill them. "Set course for the human station," he said quietly. 3 days later, the Radiant Talon limped into orbit around the blue and green world the humans called New Bizon. The repair station hung in space above it, a massive structure of metal and light. It looked crude compared to Valorian architecture, all function and no beauty. But it was large, Velroth had to admit. Very large. A human face appeared on his communication screen. The man looked young, with dark hair and calm eyes. "This is Director Hyan-Woo Park of Station Hambit. We've been tracking your approach, Commander. Your ship looks like she took a beating. We require repairs," Velroth said stiffly. "Temporary repairs only. We will return to our own facilities for proper restoration." Hyan-Woo's expression didn't change. "Understood. Base 7 is ready for you. We'll get you fixed up." The Radiant Talon docked with a series of heavy clangs that made Velroth wince. Valorian docking systems were smooth and silent. Human systems were loud and rough. It did not inspire confidence. When Velroth walked through the airlock into the station, he saw humans everywhere. They moved quickly, carrying tools and equipment, shouting to each other across the vast docking bay. The noise was incredible. Music played from somewhere. Someone was laughing. It looked nothing like a proper repair facility. A woman approached him, tall and professional in a clean gray uniform. "Commander Velroth, I'm Lead Engineer Sora Kim. Welcome to Hambit. I've reviewed your damage reports. Your fusion core took significant hits. My engineers will handle the repairs," Velroth said quickly. "We simply need access to your parts inventory and some workspace." Sora nodded without argument. "Of course. We'll provide whatever support you need. Base 7 is yours for as long as necessary." Velroth was surprised. He expected the humans to insist on doing the work themselves, to prove their worth. Instead, this engineer simply smiled and walked away, leaving him and his crew to their work. The Valorian engineers got to work immediately. They were the best in the fleet, trained at the finest academies on their homeworld. They had manuals, specifications, and centuries of refined procedures. They worked with precision and care, following every protocol exactly. 6 hours later, Chief Engineer Calvin approached Velroth with bad news. "Commander, we have a problem. The fusion core damage is more extensive than we thought. The main containment field generators are completely destroyed. Order replacement parts from the nearest Valorian supply depot." "I already did. They will arrive in 23 days. Velroth felt his stomach drop. "We cannot wait that long. What about local parts? Human parts?" Calvin looked uncomfortable. "Human fusion technology is different, primitive. Their parts will not interface with our systems. The specifications do not match. And without the proper containment generators, we cannot safely operate the core. Then repair the damaged generators." "Commander, the generators are designed to be replaced, not repaired," There is no procedure for figure it out. Velroth snapped. You are trained engineers. Surely you can adapt. But he saw the uncertainty in Calvin's eyes. Valorian engineers were trained to follow procedures, to maintain perfection. They were not trained to improvise. Hyun-woo appeared at Velroth's side as if summoned by the commander's frustration. The human director had a cup of something hot in his hand and an easy smile on his face. How are the repairs going? Hyun-woo asked. Fine, Velroth lied. Commander, I've been doing this for 12 years. I can tell when a repair is going well and when it's not. Hyun-woo gestured toward the radiant talon. Your engineers have been staring at the same fusion core for 6 hours without touching it. That's not fine. Velroth's pride warred with his desperation. Pride lost. We need parts that will not arrive for weeks. Without them, we cannot complete repairs. Mind if my team takes a look? Your engineers will not understand Valorian technology. Hyun-woo smiled. Maybe not. But we might surprise you. What have you got to lose? Velroth thought about his crew, about the weeks they would spend stranded here, about the possibility of his ship being scrapped because they could not find the right parts. He thought about his pride, and how little it would matter if they all died out here. Very well, he said. But my engineers supervise everything. Fair enough. Hyun-woo spoke into his communicator. Sora, send Taewon and G1 to Base 7. We've got a fusion core problem. 20 minutes later, 2 humans entered the engine bay. The man, Ta-won Choi, was older with grease stains on his hands. The woman, Ji-won Lee, was younger and carried a toolkit that looked like it had been used for 100 years. They both looked at the damaged fusion core with interest, not fear. Taewon walked around the core slowly, touching the broken pieces, examining the blast damage. He pulled out a small device and scanned the interior. Then he started laughing. Something amuses you about our situation? Velroth asked coldly. Sorry, Taewon said, still smiling. It's just, this reminds me of an old earth combustion engine my grandfather used to have. Same problem, different scale. He turned to Ji-won. We're going to need the plasma welder, some titanium mesh, and check if we still have those Thalen power regulators from last month. We're not using Thalen parts on a Valorian ship. Calvin protested. Why not? Ji-won asked, already heading toward the part storage. Energy is energy. We just need to make the connections work. Velroth watched as the 2 humans began working. They did not consult manuals. They did not check specifications. They simply looked at the problem, discussed solutions in quick, casual language, and started building. It looked like chaos. It looked wrong, but somehow, Velroth could not look away. Taewon stood inside the damaged fusion core, his hands covered in some kind of reflective paste that G1 had given him. Around him, the Valorian engineers watched in horror as he touched components that were supposed to be handled only with specialized tools in sterile conditions. You are contaminating the core, Calvin protested. This paste prevents radiation absorption, Taewon said calmly. We use it all the time. Now, G1, hand me that torch. G1 passed him a cutting tool. Taewon began removing the destroyed containment generator, cutting through bolts that the Valorians had said were impossible to remove without the proper extraction device. Those bolts are molecularly bonded, Calvin said weakly. Yeah, they're tough, Taewon agreed. But everything comes apart if you heat it right. You just need to know where to apply the heat. He finished cutting and pulled the ruined generator free. There we go. G1, how are those Thalen regulators looking? I'm modifying them now, she called from outside the core. Their output frequency is different from Valorian systems, but I can adjust the harmonic settings. Give me 20 minutes. Velroth stepped closer. You are going to install Thalen components into a Valorian fusion core? That is impossible. The technologies are not compatible. Taewon climbed out of the core, wiping his hands on a rag. Commander, with respect, compatibility is just a matter of making the right connections. These Thalen regulators put out energy. Your core needs to contain energy. We just need to bridge the gap. But the specifications... Forget the specifications for a minute, Taewon interrupted gently. Let me ask you something. When your engineers design a ship, what do they plan for? Optimal performance, longevity, efficiency. Right. They plan for everything to work perfectly. Taewon smiled. Human engineers assume everything will break. We design things knowing they will fail, so we make them easy to fix. We make them adaptable. Your fusion core is beautiful, Commander. It's elegant and efficient. But it was never meant to be repaired in the field. It was meant to last forever. Nothing lasts forever, Velroth said quietly. Exactly. Taewon pointed at the core. So when something built to last forever breaks, you're stuck. But humans have been fixing broken things for 10,000 years. We're good at it. A young human approached, barely more than a boy. He wore an apprentice badge on his uniform and carried a large component in his arms. Master Taewon, I found the regulators. Thanks, Dongmin, Taewon said, taking the parts. You want to help with the installation? The boy's eyes went wide. Really? On a Valorian battlecruiser? Best way to learn is by doing. Come on. Velroth watched as the old engineer and the young apprentice worked together, passing tools, discussing angles, solving problems out loud. It was strange. Valorian engineers worked in silence, following procedures. These humans talked constantly, argued, laughed, tried things that did not work, and then tried something else. G-1 returned with a custom-made adapter. Something she had apparently built in the last 30 minutes using parts from 3 different species technologies. This should work, she said, though she sounded uncertain. Should work? Calvin repeated. You are not certain? We'll test it and find out, G1 said with a shrug. That's how you learn what works. She installed the adapter, connected the Thalen regulators, and then did something that made every Valorian engineer gasp. She activated the fusion core with modified, untested components inside. Stop! Calvin shouted. You will destroy the entire ship. But the core hummed to life smoothly. The energy readings appeared on G1's scanner, and she smiled. Perfect. Well, not perfect. The efficiency is down about 12% from standard. But it works, and it's stable. Taewon patted the core housing like it was a pet. There you go, girl. Not pretty, but you'll get them home. Over the next 16 hours, the human team completely rebuilt the damaged sections of the Radiant Talon. They used Valorian parts were available. But when they could not find the right components, they improvised. A Corvin power coupling replaced a destroyed energy conduit. Human-made titanium mesh reinforced a cracked hull plate. They even repurposed parts from an old mining laser to create a temporary shield generator. Velroth watched it all. He watched Taewon explain to young Dongmin why certain metals worked better under stress. He watched G1 argue with Sora about the best welding technique, both of them trying different approaches until they found one that worked. He watched the human engineers treat his ship not like a sacred artifact, but like a machine that needed to work. When they finished, Sora brought Velroth to the engine room for an inspection. She's ready, Commander. I won't lie to you. This isn't a factory standard repair. But your fusion core is running at 88% efficiency, which is better than it was before the attack. Your hull is solid. Your shields are functional. You can make it home safely. Velroth looked at the fusion core. It was ugly now, with mismatched parts and improvised connections. It looked nothing like a proper Valorian system, but the readings were stable. Strong, even. How long will these repairs last? He asked. The regulators should be good for several years if you maintain them properly. The hull patches are permanent. The shield generator is temporary, maybe 6 months. I'd replace it when you get home. Sora handed him a data chip. I've documented everything we did, including maintenance procedures. Your engineers can keep it running, or you can replace the modified parts when you reach your shipyard. Your choice. Velroth took the chip. In 18 hours you accomplished what my engineers said was impossible. We had different training, Sora said simply. Your engineers are taught to maintain perfection. Ours are taught to fix problems. Different skills. That night, before the Radiant Talon departed, Velroth found Haiyan Wu in the station's observation deck. The director stood looking out at the stars, drinking another cup of that hot beverage. Your engineers are remarkable, Velroth admitted. They're pretty good, Haiyan Wu agreed. Why did you not insist on doing the repairs from the start? Why let my engineers try first? Haiyan Wu smiled. Because you needed to see the problem for yourself. If I told you our way was better, you wouldn't have believed me. You needed to see your engineers struggle with something ours could fix. That seems inefficient. Maybe, but now you trust us. And trust is worth a few extra hours. Velroth was silent for a moment. Other ships will come here. Word will spread. Probably. Your people will become very important to the coalition. Maybe, Haiyan Wu said. We're just trying to help where we can. The next morning, the Radiant Talon departed Station Hambit. The ship's improvised systems ran smoothly, carrying the crew home safely. In his quarters, Velroth examined the data chip Sora had given him. Reading through the repair procedures thought they were strange procedures, full of phrases like, if this doesn't work, try this and adjust as needed, and use your judgment. There were no absolute rules, no perfect specifications. Just guidelines and suggestions. It was the most alien thing Velroth had ever seen, and it worked. Yuna Shin stood in the diplomatic office of Station Hambit, looking at the queue of ships waiting for repairs. 3 months ago, they handled maybe 2 or 3 alien vessels per week. Now, 17 ships were waiting in orbit, and more arrived every day. Director Park, we have another situation, she said into her communicator. Haiyan Wu's voice came back tired but amused. What kind of situation? A Mechan warship just arrived. They're refusing to let their own repair crews touch their engines. They're demanding human engineers only. The Mechans? They never let outsiders near their ships. I know. But their captain says he heard about what we did for the Radiant Talon. He says Mechan engineers can only replace parts, not fix them. Yuna looked at her screen. Haiyan Wu, we're getting famous. Ships are coming from 3 sectors away just to dock here. Can we handle the load? Barely. We need more engineers. Within the week, 200 more human engineers arrived from Earth and the colonies. The station expanded, opening new repair bays. More ships came. Talon research vessels with damaged experimental drives. Corvin cargo haulers with engine problems their own mechanics could not solve. Even proud Valorian military ships started coming directly to Hambit instead of their own facilities. Suho Nam was working on a Thalen stasis drive when the ship's chief scientist approached him. The Thalen looked nervous, his multiple eyes blinking in confusion as he watched Suho work. I do not understand what you are doing, the scientist said. Su-Ho looked up from the drive mechanism, wiping sweat from his face. I'm replacing the phase alignment system. Yours burned out, but you are not using Thalen parts. You don't have any spare parts on board, and the nearest Thalen facility is 2 weeks away. Suho held up a strange-looking component. This is from an old Earth submarine. 20th century technology. It uses magnetic fields to align metal plates. Same basic principle as your phase alignment, just much simpler. The Thaylen scientist looked horrified. That is primitive technology. It cannot possibly work with our advanced stasis field. Watch. Suho installed the component, made several adjustments, and activated the drive. The stasis field appeared, stable and strong. It's not as efficient as your original system, maybe 70%. But it works, and you can make it home for proper repairs. But how did you know this would work? Suho smiled. I didn't, not for sure. But I know how magnetic fields work, and I know how your stasis drive works. I just needed to make them talk to each other. He patted the drive housing. Everything is just physics in the end. If you understand the physics, you can make different technologies work together. The Thaylen scientist stood silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, our engineers would never have thought of this solution. Different training, Suho said. The same phrase Sora had used months before. You guys are taught to follow designs. We're taught to solve problems. In another bay, Mirai Kang was documenting repair procedures when she noticed something disturbing. She pulled up the databases from 6 different coalition species and searched for specific terms. Then she brought her findings to Hyam Wu. We have a bigger problem than I thought, she said, spreading data across his desk screen. Show me. I've been comparing our technical databases to theirs. Look at this. Valorians have comprehensive construction manuals, perfect specifications, complete replacement procedures. But they have no troubleshooting guides, no repair manuals, no field maintenance procedures. Hyun Woo leaned forward. Nothing? Nothing. The Thalens are the same. The Corvin, the Mechans, all of them. They have perfect instructions for building things and perfect instructions for replacing broken parts. But if something breaks in a way they didn't predict, they have no procedures for fixing it. They just replace the entire system. That's insane. What if they can't get replacement parts? Then the equipment is considered non-functional. Garbage. Murray pulled up more data. I found a Corvin database entry about a cargo hauler that was abandoned in deep space because their navigation system failed. They couldn't get replacement parts for 6 months, so they just abandoned a perfectly good ship. Hyun Woo sat back, understanding dawning on his face. They don't know how to improvise. They've never had to. Exactly. Their civilizations have been stable for thousands of years. They've had plenty of resources, plenty of spare parts, plenty of time. If something breaks, they just wait for the right replacement. They've never developed a culture of making do with what you have. But humans have, Hyun Woo said quietly. We spent 10,000 years fighting wars, struggling with scarcity, breaking things and having to fix them with whatever we could find. We couldn't afford to wait for perfect parts. We had to improvise or die. Murray nodded. Our entire technological development was based on fixing broken things. Every human engineer grows up taking apart old machines and putting them back together. We learn to see how things work, not just how they're supposed to work. That's our advantage. The implications settled over them like a heavy blanket. Humanity had stumbled into the galaxy with inferior technology and less experience than any other coalition species. But they had one skill nobody else possessed: the ability to fix anything, anywhere, with whatever they had available. Over the following months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Ships from across coalition space began routing their patrols to pass near human repair stations. Captains requested human engineers specifically. Some alien crews even started learning from human mechanics, trying to understand this strange way of thinking that treated every problem as solvable. Yuna found herself negotiating contracts with planetary governments, military fleets, and corporate shipping lines. Everyone wanted access to human repair expertise. Some offered enormous payments. Others offered technology, resources, territory. One Valorian admiral even offered to give humans a colony world in exchange for a permanent human repair facility in Valorian space. "We're becoming indispensable," Yuna told Hyan Wu one evening. 3 months ago, we were barely known in the coalition. Now, half the military fleets in the sector depend on us. Is that a good thing? Hyan Wu asked. I don't know. Being needed is good. Being needed this badly makes me nervous. She was right to be nervous. In the Valorian High Council chambers, Admiral Karth then stood before the assembled leaders with a proposal. Humanity has become a critical weakness in our defensive infrastructure, he said. We cannot allow our military readiness to depend on a single species. I propose we acquire their expertise by force if necessary. Their repair knowledge must be integrated into coalition databases so all species can benefit. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. They are coalition members, one counselor protested. We cannot simply take their knowledge. Can we afford not to? Carthan replied. What happens when humanity decides to charge us more? What happens if they refuse to help during a crisis? We have made ourselves dependent on them, and dependency is weakness. The debate raged for hours. But the conclusion was becoming clear. Humanity's unique abilities made them too valuable to ignore and too important to leave independent. Something would have to change, and change was coming faster than anyone expected. The emergency transmission reached Station Hambit at 03:00 hours. Yuna was pulled from sleep by the urgent call. When she reached the command center, Hyan Wu was already there, his face pale as he watched the incoming reports. The Third Fleet engaged the Scarrick swarm at the border, he said without looking up. It was a massacre. 47 ships made it out. All of them damaged. Most of them critical. Yuna felt her stomach drop. 47 ships? Hyan Wu, we can't handle that many at once. I know. Neither can the other human stations. Between all three of us, we might manage 20 ships, maybe. What about coalition repair facilities? Hyan Wu pulled up the data. The nearest Valorian shipyard can handle 5 ships at a time. Talon facilities are even smaller. The Corvin don't have military repair capabilities at all. They contract everything out to. He stopped. To us, Yuna finished. The damaged fleet arrived over the next 2 days. The ships were in terrible condition. Some barely had life support. Others were held together by emergency force fields. The captains were desperate, their crews injured and frightened. Hyan Wu, Sora, and Mirai stood in the command center, looking at the impossible task ahead of them. We take the worst cases first, Sora said. Ships that will die without immediate help. Everything else waits. Some of those crews will die waiting, Mirai said quietly. I know, Sora's voice was hard. But we can't save everyone. We save who we can. They worked for 72 hours straight. Every human engineer on the station pushed themselves to exhaustion. They repaired hull breaches, restarted dead engines, stabilized fusion cores. Ships that should have been scrapped flew again. But it was not enough. 20 ships were saved. The rest waited, their crews hoping. That was when the Coalition High Command summoned Hyan Wu. The council chamber was massive, filled with representatives from 30 different species. Admiral Carthan stood at the front, his face stern and uncompromising. Beside him stood several other military leaders, all looking at Hyan Wu with expressions ranging from desperation to anger. Director Park, Carthan began. The coalition faces a crisis. We have ships dying because we do not have enough repair capacity. This is unacceptable. I agree, Hyan Wu said. We're doing everything we can. It is not enough. Carthan slammed his hand on the podium. We need to expand our repair capabilities immediately. We need you to share your knowledge with Coalition databases so our engineers can replicate your methods. Every species should be able to perform these repairs, not just humans. Haiyan Wu had expected this. He had prepared for it. But standing here, facing the combined military might of the Coalition, he still felt small. I can't do that, he said quietly. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. Carthan raised his hand for silence. You refuse to help the Coalition in its time of need? I'm not refusing to help. I'm telling you it's impossible. Haiyan Wu stepped forward. You can't program creativity into a database. You can't write a manual for improvisation. What human engineers do can't be reduced to procedures and specifications. Nonsense, Carthan snapped. All knowledge can be codified. No, it can't. Haiyan Wu pulled up a holographic display. Let me show you something. These are 3 Valorian cruisers. Same class, same model, same construction date. All 3 had fusion core failures. Sora Kim, Taewon Choi, and Suho Nam each repaired one. Watch. The hologram showed the 3 repairs side by side. Each engineer approached the problem differently. Sora rebuilt the containment field using modified Talon generators. Taewon created a hybrid system with Corvin and human parts. Suho bypassed the damaged sections entirely and rerouted power through the secondary systems. 3 identical problems, Haiyan Wu said. 3 completely different solutions. All of them work. All of them safe. None of them in any manual. But why? A Thalen counselor leaned forward. Why did they each choose different methods? Because each ship's damage was unique. The blast patterns were different. The available parts were different. The time constraints were different. Each engineer looked at their specific situation and created a unique solution. Haiyan Wu turned to face the council. That's what makes human repair methods work. We don't follow procedures. We understand principles. We see the problem, we understand the goal, and we figure out a path between them. Carthan shook his head. Then teach our engineers these principles. Run training programs. Create educational materials. Jae-Sung Lee, who had accompanied Haiyan Wu, stood up. May I demonstrate something? At Carthan's nod, Jae-Sung pulled 3 alien engineers from the audience. 1 Valorian, 1 Thalen, 1 Corvin. He placed a broken device on the table between them. This is a standard plasma regulator, Jae-Sung said. It's broken. I want each of you to tell me how to fix it. The Valorian engineer scanned the device. The primary coupling is damaged. It needs to be replaced. Part number VR7743A. There are no spare parts available, Jae-Sung said. The Valorian looked confused. Then the device cannot be repaired. It must be replaced entirely. The Thalen engineer examined it. I could rebuild the coupling if I had the proper manufacturing equipment and 3 days. You have 2 hours and a standard toolkit. Then it is impossible. The Corvin engineer didn't even try. We would purchase a new regulator. This is not repairable in field conditions. Jae-Sung then handed the device to a young human apprentice, a woman named Hana, who had been training for only 6 months. She looked at the broken coupling, thought for a moment, then pulled a small piece of wire from her pocket and began wrapping it around the damaged section. What are you doing? The Valorian asked. The coupling is broken, but the connection points are fine, Hana explained. If I can bridge the gap with a conductor and stabilize it with this magnetic clip from my toolkit, the current should flow. It won't be as efficient as a new coupling, but it should work for a few weeks until you can get a proper replacement. She finished her improvised repair and activated the device. It hummed to life, running at about 70% efficiency. The alien engineers stared in shock. That was not in any procedure, the Thalen said. Exactly, Hyan-Woo said. Hannah didn't follow a procedure. She understood how the device worked, what it needed to do, and she made it work with what she had. That's human engineering. You can't teach that in a classroom or write it in a manual. It's a way of thinking that comes from 10,000 years of making broken things work. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, a Valorian counselor spoke. Then what do you propose? How do we solve this crisis? You don't, Hyan-Woo said. You work with it. Humans will keep repairing your ships. We'll train more engineers, build more stations, expand our capabilities. But you have to accept that some skills can't be copied. Some abilities have to be earned through experience. Admiral Carthan's face was dark with anger, but he said nothing. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to force humanity to share their knowledge. Others recognized the futility of it. In the end, pragmatism won. The coalition would continue to rely on human repair capabilities. They had no other choice. 6 months after the council meeting, Station Hamid had grown into the largest repair facility in coalition space. 3,000 human engineers worked around the clock in 24 massive docking bays. Ships from every corner of known space came here for repairs. Hyan-Woo barely recognized the station he had, once commanded with just 200 workers. But growth brought danger. The explosion happened at shift change, when the station was at its busiest. The main power grid simply died, taking life support, gravity control, and communications with it. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. Sora was in Bay 12 when the lights went out. She grabbed the handhold as gravity failed, watching tools and equipment float past her in the darkness. Everyone stay calm, she shouted. Emergency protocols. Get to your stations and secure your areas. But as the initial shock passed, the real problem became clear. Without main power, they could not operate the repair bays. Without communications, they could not coordinate. 43 alien ships were docked at the station, all of them trapped. Their crews were safe, but the ships could not leave without power to the docking clamps. Hyan-Woo made his way through the darkened corridors to the command center, pulling himself along in zero gravity. Mireille was already there, running diagnostics by emergency power. Sabotage, she said without greeting. Someone planted a virus in our power management system. It spread through the entire grid before we could stop it. The system is completely corrupted. Can we restore from backups? The backups were infected too. Whoever did this knew our systems well. Mireille's face was grim in the emergency lighting. Hyan-Woo were dead in space. It would take 3 weeks to rebuild the power management system from scratch, even with all our engineers working on it. A message appeared on the emergency communication system. Text only, from an unknown source. Humanity should not hold the coalition hostage. You have made us dependent. Now you will see how dangerous that dependence is. Hyan-Woo stared at the message. Some group within the coalition, had decided to make a point. By crippling Station Hamid, they were showing what would happen if humanity ever failed in its responsibilities. Get everyone to the command center, Hyan-Woo said quietly. We need to fix this. Within an hour, every senior engineer on the station had gathered. They floated in the zero gravity, tired and worried, but ready to work. Hyan-Woo explained the situation. We need full power restored in less than 48 hours, he finished. After that, life support on some of the docked ships will start to fail. We can't let those crews die. The power management system is gone, Taewon said. We would need to rebuild it completely. That takes weeks. Then we don't rebuild it, Sora said slowly. We replace it. With what? Mireille asked. We don't have a spare power management system just sitting around, No, but we have parts. Sora pulled up a schematic on her emergency pad. Look, Bay 7 has a Corvin hauler with a damaged navigation computer. Bay 12 has the Thelen research vessel with the broken environmental controls. Bay 19 has the mining station processor we salvaged last month. Each of those systems has components we can use. You want to build a power management system out of spare parts from different species technologies? Jisung asked. Why not? Sora smiled. It's what we do. For the next 36 hours, the human engineers performed the most ambitious improvisation in their history. They pulled power regulators from Corvin ships, processing cores from Thalen vessels, control interfaces from Valorian systems. Young Dong-min, now a full engineer, coordinated teams across 12 different bays. Moving components and running calculations. Hannah worked with Suho to create custom connectors, building bridges between technologies that had never been designed to work together. G1 and Tae1 rewired entire sections of the station, creating new power pathways when the old ones failed. The alien crews watched in amazement. A Valorian captain approached Hyan Wu as he supervised the work in Bay 7. "This is madness," the captain said. "You are building a critical system from random parts. It cannot possibly work." "We won't know until we try," Hyan Wu replied. "But if it fails, we all die. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail." At hour 35, Sora stood before the makeshift power management system they had built. It looked like nothing that had ever existed before. Wires ran in tangled patterns. Components from 6 different species were jammed together with custom adapters. The whole thing was held in place by magnetic clamps and emergency welds. "This is either going to work," Murray said, "or it's going to explode spectacularly. Only one way to find out." Sora activated the system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the lights began to flicker on. Power flowed through the station's grid. Gravity returned, pulling everyone gently back to the floors. Life support hummed to life. Communications crackled back online. The makeshift system worked. Engineers cheered across the station. Alien crews stared in disbelief at their suddenly functioning ships. And in the command center, Hyan Wu allowed himself a small smile. When Coalition investigators arrived 3 days later, they found Station Hambit operating normally. They examined the power management system and could not understand how it functioned. According to engineering principle, they knew it should not work. The components were incompatible. The design was chaotic. The whole thing violated a dozen safety standards, but it worked perfectly. The lead investigator, a Thalen named Velkas, found Hyan Wu in the observation deck. "I have studied engineering for 40 years, Velkas said. "I have 3 advanced degrees from the finest institutions on Thela. I have designed power systems for hundreds of ships." He gestured toward the station. "I cannot understand how your improvised system functions. By all logic, it should have failed catastrophically." "It functions because we understood what it needed to do," Hyan Wu said. "We didn't worry about making it perfect. We worried about making it work. But how did you know it would work?" "We didn't. We hoped it would work. We believed it could work. And we made it work." Hyan Wu looked out at the stars. "That's the difference between human engineering and everyone else's. You build things to be perfect. We build things to be fixable." The sabotage attempt had failed, but it had proven something important. The Coalition could not function without human engineers. Not just for convenience, but for survival. When everything failed and all the proper procedures were useless, humans found a way. 2 weeks later, Hyan Wu received a message from the Coalition High Council. He was being offered a seat on the council as the first human representative. Not as a diplomat or a military leader, but as chief of engineering operations. Humanity would oversee all repair and maintenance operations across Coalition space. U-Na found him reading the offer in his office. Are you going to accept? She asked. Do I have a choice? Hyan Wu replied. They're not offering this because they respect us. They're offering it because they need us. Does it matter why they're offering it? Hyan Wu thought about that. He thought about Sora and Taewon and all the engineers who had worked themselves to exhaustion to save alien crews. He thought about young Dongmin and Hana, learning to see problems not as obstacles, but as puzzles to be solved. He thought about humanity's long history of breaking things and fixing them, of adapting and surviving. No, he said finally. It doesn't matter why. What matters is that we can help. That's what we do. 5 years later, Station Hambit was one of 47 human repair facilities across Coalition space. Every major fleet had human engineering teams. Young aliens trained alongside human engineers, trying to learn this strange way of thinking that saw every problem as solvable. Dong-Min, now a master engineer himself, taught a class of mixed-species apprentices in Bay 7. He held up a broken device and asked, "How do we fix this?" The Valorian student began reciting specifications. The Thalian student started calculating replacement requirements, but the human student, and a few of the braver alien ones, looked at the device and asked different questions. What does it need to do? What do we have available? What can we make work? And across the galaxy, on ships and stations and colonies, the call went out whenever something broke beyond normal repair. Get me to a human dock. Because in a galaxy of perfect technology and rigid procedures, humanity had taught the universe an old truth. Nothing is truly broken if you are creative enough to fix it.